My book is about, it's called This Gulf of Fire. It's about the Great Lisbon earthquake disaster of 1755, which I argue was the most consequential natural disaster in history. It led to the rise of a dictator in Portugal after it completely destroyed the capital of the Portuguese Empire, that is Lisbon. It also caused an enormously important debate in Enlightenment, in the middle of the Enlightenment, that influenced the rest of European thought in that century, the 18th century. Well, I've been thinking about working on the Lisbon earthquake. In fact, I've been working on it since I was an undergraduate. I wrote an undergraduate thesis on the Lisbon earthquake, but when I went to graduate school, I sort of put it aside and worked on other topics. But because I had been an exchange student between high school and college in the northern part of Brazil for a year, I knew Portuguese, but I also knew a number of other European languages. And as an intellectual historian, and also a historian who's interested in narrative history, and interested in writing history for a popular audience in a style that is hopefully engaging and tells essentially a story, I thought this would be the perfect topic to bring together all of my skills and interests. A gripping story that impacts European history and causes a debate among the most celebrated thinkers in Europe at the time. There have been a few books. The 250th anniversary was 10 years ago, actually. My book is being published 2 days after the 260th anniversary. What I'm trying to do with my book is provide the comprehensive history to the disaster. And I have spent the last 8 years going to archives and libraries on 3 continents: Brazil, the United States. I was in Italy at the Vatican Library. I was in Berlin at various collections there, because it was a disaster that impacted a number of different countries. In fact, it wasn't just an earthquake that destroyed Lisbon. The reason I call it the disaster is that it caused a tsunami that hit, in fact, 4 continents and drowned people on 3, and then led to a hellacious fire that essentially destroyed the center of Lisbon and those parts that hadn't been destroyed by the earthquake. Although there have been other books, my hope is that I have, at least as much as one can in 7 or 8 years, kind of exhaust the sources, or at least I've spent that time trying to find as much as I can. For example, I look at the reaction of the Russians. I've looked at Russian newspapers, and my friends in the history department, my colleagues in the history department, have helped me translate those. And so I can show a kind of a European reaction, and indeed a Western reaction, all the way from Lima to St. Petersburg. At the time, it was very impactful. It was the big event in all the newspapers of the Western world for several months. But then it kind of got lost. The 7 Years' War, which we in America call the French and Indian War, started, and people kind of became preoccupied with that. A few books and poems, the most famous, was influenced by it, was Voltaire's Candide. Immanuel Kant, the great Prussian and German philosopher, wrote 3 essays on it in the year after, in 1756. But by the end of the 1750s, it ceased to be a concern for the most part of European thinkers. And you rarely hear about it. As I say, a couple books, were written after the 250th anniversary. But if you were to ask 10 sort of college-educated people in the streets in Europe or America, very few of them would have ever heard of it. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm writing this book, and that I'm happy that a press like Alfred A. Knopf is publishing it. And so hopefully kind of the word will get out about this extraordinarily impactful natural disaster that occurred 260 years ago, and I think is still and teach us lessons about how to deal with natural disasters, because of course we do.